rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
All right, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show on this Monday. I'm glad that you could join me today. I hope that you had a fabulous weekend. If you're living in Florida, I hope that you're getting prepared for Hurricane Ian that may make landfall. We don't seem to be quite sure as of yet, but brace yourself, prepare. Hopefully you have been preparing, keeping extra food and water around, extra batteries, so on, etc. Anything that you would need in case your power goes off or goes out, or if things get worse. So if you're listening to this podcast, please pray for your brethren, if you will, in the state of Florida, because I don't suspect the next few days are going to be easy unless this Hurricane Ian starts to dissipate over the sea. And it doesn't look like that's happening. A couple of things that I want to bring you in the news before I get to the topic of today. And the topic of today is the DOJ coming for you next? We need to impeach Merrick Garland the moment the Republican Party takes a hold of the House. They need to impeach Merrick Garland. They also need to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas. And I'm going to get into why, and I'm going to mention some things that we need to be aware of in America, as aware of as patriots, because the left is coming for us. And when I say the left, I don't mean the Democrat Party. I don't mean the Democrat left or the Democratic left, if you will. I think we're dealing with full-blown communists that have infiltrated the Democrat Party, full-blown socialists that have infiltrated the Democrat Party. I believe that Joe Biden is one himself. I've told you many a times before that Joe Biden never was a moderate. He was never Lunchbox Joe. As a matter of fact, going back to, I forget the name of the poll, but they surveyed Joe Biden's voting record over the years, and on a conservative polling poll, if you will, out of 100 votes, only 12 would have been aligned with the conservative movement, meaning the guy is a full-blown socialist and always has been. It's a guy that's always been hungry for power, a guy that's always been corrupt, a guy that's always been politically expedient, doing whatever and saying whatever he has to do in order to be in the media, in order to be popular, in order to feel, as if he has a purpose in life. But he's always been corrupt, and he's always been a leftist. He's always leaned to the left. So that's something that you have to understand. And having that in mind, we wonder, how can so many left-wing radicals be appointed to his cabinet? Well, it's because Joe Biden himself was one. Now, before I get into that and the major story of the day, how an FBI raided a Catholic pro-life speaker's home. He's also an author, and guns were drawn, about 25 or 30 agents. I want you to understand that these people might be coming for you next. And I'm going to also explain things that we should be worried about, because I do believe that America is in danger. And I don't think Americans can sustain another onslaught or another couple of years of Joe Biden and in the White House. Well, Joe Biden will be in the White House. God knows how long. I don't suspect necessarily for the next couple of years, but perhaps he may be. I don't believe he will be the candidate for 2024 going forward. But we definitely cannot have the Democrat Party in control of the House and the Senate going forward. Otherwise, I don't see how this nation survives. All right. So a couple of things that are happening in the news that I want to make sure that I make mention of. And it's not as if you don't already know this one. According to the Daily Mail, the housing market is in a recession. So is the economy, by the way. We've already had 2 consecutive quarters of economic decline. I think we might slip into 3 quarters. But it says here, record high housing prices in the U.S. could collapse by up to 20% over the next year if a recession that's sparked by Joe Biden's inflation takes hold. This a top Wall Street economist has warned. Ian Shepardson, he's a chief economist at the Patheon Macroeconomics, pointed out that home prices have already declined by about 5% and from their peak in May, and will continue to tumble. According to his previous work, there are now 40% more single-family homes available than just 4 months ago. Prices for homes sank by 0.7 or 0.7% in August, but Shepardson predicts a total decline of up to 20% by the middle of 2023. Now, obviously, there are going to be some places that are going to be isolated to this type of decline in the housing market. And I pray to God, many of you out there will not have to experience that. We experienced that in Florida. I know other places around the country did. during the recession back in 2008-09 era, where the housing prices collapsed literally by 50% in some cases, and even more in some cases. But obviously 20% is a huge drop, particularly if you've just purchased a home, and you're going to see all that equity and then some dissipate almost immediately. What I would encourage you to do is make sure that you are getting out of debt. And make sure you're accumulating things that are worth money, assets, things that are valuable for trade. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what some of the people did during the Great Depression in order to survive. It was more of a bartering system. What are people going to need? Obviously, food, housing, shelter, clothing, all that kind of stuff. Those are the things that people are going to need. So just keep that in mind. I don't mean to scare you. I don't mean to sound hyperbolic, but if you think things are crazy now, they're going to get crazy. Another couple of stories that I think are disconcerting before I land on this latest DOJ bullying, and why I think that every American should be concerned as to whether or not the DOJ is going to come for you. Here's another story. Governor Newsom of California obviously signs a bill allowing illegal aliens, I'm not saying immigrants, to have access to state IDs. That's right. Governor Gavin Newsom signed a bill into law. This occurred on Friday, where illegal aliens or allowing illegal aliens the opportunity, they say, undocumented immigrants. This is from ABC. Well, what the hell are undocumented immigrants, ABC? They're illegal aliens. So illegal aliens to have the opportunity to obtain a state ID. The legislation aims to support immigrants by expanding their access to state programs. Critics have argued it rewards people who enter the country illegally, and they've expressed concerns about the cost of rolling out of the new IDs. I think personally, this is the least of our worries, considering some of the stories that I'm going to bring to you shortly. I think we really do have to be concerned about crime. There's no doubt that the left is trying to dilute American exceptionalism. There's no doubt they're trying to change the demographics as people move in, illegal aliens move into California and spread throughout the country. There's no doubt that they're attempting to do all of those things, but I am particularly worried about the crime in the short run, and we'll get into that shortly here. The pro-life speaker, counselor arrested by FBI for charges that were dropped by local courts. That's what I'm going to focus on here shortly, but I still want to go back to a couple of more headlines that are in the news that you should be aware of. Biden lies about the gas prices, and he gets fact-checked right away. Even CNN called out the blatant lie. During a campaign-style Friday speech at the DNC event in Washington, Joe Biden boasted about the 3-month decline in gas prices and about the unemployment rate. He used inaccurate figures on both subjects, according to the piece. This is the CNN piece, by the way. Biden's claim about average gasoline prices was false, as the White House acknowledged by correcting the official transcript after CNN inquired about the claim on Friday afternoon. So CNN is now trying to pretend as if they are a legitimate news organization. I don't know if you've heard the news, but Jake Tapper apparently is going to be filling in on prime time, are going to take the spot. I assume that's Don Lemon's spot, or soon to be former spot. But Jake Tapper, having Jake Tapper in that place proves to me that CNN is not reformed. It's still going to be a very left-leaning organization. People that pretend to be reporting the news while they're actually opining. That's exactly what's going to continue. Poll indicates tight midterms, with determining factor being Biden's low approval rating. This is something to consider, guys. If you haven't supported a candidate financially, it's time to do it. If you haven't volunteered, it's time to do it. Whatever you can do, whatever it is that God has equipped you to do, it is time to do it. Do not wait until the last minute. I know right here in Florida, Marco Rubio needs help. I know in Wisconsin, Ron Johnson, Herschel Walker in Georgia. You got Blake Masters in Arizona. I'm missing some people here. J.D. Vance in Ohio. Whomever you feel called to help, make sure you help them. There's a Nevada race. There are the governor races. You have Kerry Lake, who's running for governor in Arizona. If you can afford to give, if it's $5, $20, $50, $100, $1,000, up to the up to the maximum donation. Make sure you go ahead and do so. Here's another one that I think is just a funny headline. Liz Cheney claims if Trump becomes a GOP nominee, she will no longer be a Republican. Liz, I didn't know you were still a Republican. You're definitely anti-American by chasing after a former Republican president and lying about it. Honestly, you've become a disgrace, Liz Cheney. So you're a Democrat as far as I'm concerned. Carrie Lake basically said the same thing. Here's another stat. Heritage Foundation analysis finds Americans have lost $4,200 in income due to inflation. And guys, it's going to continue to do worse. Keep in mind that inflation is a tax on the poor, but everybody feels inflation. Obviously, if you make more money, you're not going to be hurt as much by inflation as those that make less. If you're in the middle, middle America, middle income America, if you are poverty stricken, if you're a poor American, inflation is going to hit you hard, and it's going to hit you much harder. We talk about these numbers, 8.2% inflation, 8.3% inflation, 9.1. It's gone up and down during this summer. But the truth of the matter is when you go out and buy groceries, you're paying double in many cases, and sometimes even more for some of the grocery items that you bought during the Trump administration latter years, compared to, let's say, the 2018 midterms of Trump's presidency compared to this midterm coming up in Biden's presidency. You're paying at least 50% more for groceries. And that inflation didn't begin until Biden got into office and spent $1.9 trillion on the American Rescue Plan, which was an American destruction plan, and then infrastructure, where did that money go? And then they continue to spend money. Remember that inflation is always a direct result of government spending, nothing else. The government spends too much money. That means they've got to print. They've got to print money, or they've got to they've got to borrow money. They've got to take more money from you in the form of taxes. That causes inflation. It is totally a government issue. So if you're voting for big government, you're voting for the Democrat Party as it exists today. Listen, it's why we're in trouble. Now, Republicans aren't necessarily free of this charge. They spend too much damn money themselves. But hopefully we're going to work on that the next time we get in office. Now, I want to go back to this topic at hand, the topic that I said I would be talking about, and that is Hat Tip Life site news. FBI raids the home of a Catholic pro-life speaker, author with guns drawn as his terrified kids watch. Now, guys, you might think this is a story about a man that just happens to be pro-life, and Carl wants to talk about the pro-life issues and all of this kind of stuff leading up to the election. Actually, I don't. And what I've told you before is that Republicans shouldn't worry about abortion. They shouldn't allow their opponents to frame the abortion issue as they're anti-abortion or anti-pro-choice or anti-female. No, I'm sorry. Dobbs versus Jackson, just like you lefties used to say about Roe v. Wade, Dobbs versus Jackson is settled law. So now it goes back to the states. The issue goes back to the states, and states are deciding on their own, and they will continue to do so, what they will do as far as abortion matters are concerned. In the state of Florida right here, we have it's a 15-week period where mothers can choose to abort or kill their babies in the womb. They have 15 weeks to make up their mind, despite the fact that at that point in time, babies can feel pain. You can still go up to 15 weeks in the state of Florida, and each state is making their own choice. So Republicans, when it comes to this issue, this is very easy. You should pivot and move back to the issues that you should be talking about, and that is crime, that is illegal immigration, that is inflation. Right? Those are the issues that we need to pound. Democrats, and not only that, but also CRT, right? The wokeness. So crime, illegal immigration, wokeness, the inflation. These are the issues we need to pound the Democrats on. So now getting back to this topic, this is why this is important, however, because the Democrat Party is going to be coming for you. Understand that we are dealing with a Democrat Party that are a bunch of tyrants. There's another headline I want to make sure that I get to, in case you think Facebook all of a sudden has repented since Mark Zucker went on Joe Rogan's podcast and admitted that the FBI came to him on the down low, basically asking them to censor Americans In case you think that Zuckerberg was trying to repent, they're not. They don't want Republicans to win the House or the Senate. Why? Because it's very likely that these people in the big tech will lose a lot of power, and a lot of things will be found out about them that I'm sure aren't friendly to their companies. But here's a headline. This is from Real Clear Politics. Facebook silencing, quote unquote, activity related to FBI whistleblower complaints. You know, the FBI whistleblowers are being bullied right now, right? These men, it takes a lot of courage to do what they're doing because they put everything on the line. Their careers probably gone, right? Hopefully they can get jobs elsewhere. But their careers, at least for the time being, are probably gone. We need to be able to make sure that Merrick Garland is kicked out of the DOJ. These are communists. If you don't bow down to the left, there's no place for you. And what the left is trying to create, and I'm saying left intentionally, what the left, they exist within the Democrat Party. They're trying to create a police state. These are socialists. Understand what we're up against. The November election, again, isn't about Democrat or Republican. It's about liberty and tyranny versus tyranny. It's about good versus evil. That's what the elections of 2022 is about. Forget the party names. Don't get stuck there. Hat tip LifeSite News. This is in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. A well-known pro-life author and sidewalk counselor, father of 7, was the latest victim of a U.S. Department of Justice-sponsored SWAT raid and arrest for the supposed FACE Act. And FACE is an acronym, FACE, violations at his rural home as his children looked on screaming. Let me try to remember, or let me check. I forget what the FACE Act stands for, what the acronym itself stands for. And great. I didn't highlight it. That's great. I'll run across it. But basically, I can tell you what happened. So it's been a couple of years. This was a guy who actually, Mark Holck is his name, Houck, the founder and president of Kingsman, that promotes healing for victims of pornography, addiction, and promotes Christian virtues among men in the U.S. and in Europe. So according to his wife, Ryan Marie, who spoke to LifeSite News, he drives about 2 hours to Philadelphia every Wednesday to sidewalk, preach, or counsel for 6 to 8 hours at 2 different abortion centers inside of Philadelphia. So Ryan Marie, the wife, is a homeschooling mother. She said that 25 to 30 FBI agents came to their door, banging on their door, swarmed their property, around 15 vehicles. This was at 7:05 a.m. I believe this occurred on what is today, Monday? So I believe this occurred on Friday morning. They quickly surrounded the house with rifles in a firing position. They started pounding at the door and yelling for us to open it, according to Ryan Marie. Before opening the door, she explained that her husband tried to calm them, saying, "Please, I'm going to open the door, but please," and I'm quoting here, "my children are in the home. I have 7 babies in the house, but they just kept pounding and screaming," close quote. When he finally opened the door, Mark did. They had big, huge rifles, according to Ryan Marie, the house. They pointed it at Mark. They pointed them at her, and they kind of pointed throughout the house. So you can imagine they open the door, they bust down the doors. You know, the FBI agents are sitting there kind of sweeping the house, trying to make sure they're safe. That's something that they would do in training. But do they really need 25 to 35 agents to show up their house to get a guy that's a sidewalk preacher, essentially trying to stop abortion? The kids were screaming, she says. It was all just very scary and traumatic. They asked them where they were, why they were at the house. The agent said they were there to arrest Mark. And then the wife asked for a warrant. They claim that they said they were, and I'm quoting, they were going to take him whether they had a warrant or not, close quote. Oh, really? Really? She, a strong woman, obviously, she said, she protested, said, "No, that is kidnapping. You can't just come to a person's house and kidnap them at gunpoint," close quote. So they agreed and they got the warrant. At least they got the first page of the warrant. So at this point, Mark had asked her to go get him a sweater and his rosaries. But by the time she came back downstairs or back to the front room, they already had him cuffed and in the car. And again, they provided the first page of the warrant. They took him down to the federal building in downtown Philadelphia. And she says here, after they had taken Mark and the kids were all screaming that he was there, that he was their best friend, the FBI agents on her porch, they kind of softened a bit. She says, I think they realized what was happening, or maybe they actually looked at the warrant. She said they looked pretty ashamed at what had just happened once they had him cuffed, arrested in the car, and things started to calm down a little bit. As a result, the homeschool mother said her kids were, quote, really sad and stressed. So I've already reached out to some psychiatrists or psychologists to try and help us through this. I don't really know what's going to come of it. When you see guns pointed at your dad and your mom in your house when you first wake up in the morning. And guys, let me say this. There's no doubt about it. This is a Catholic family, 7 children. She's a homeschooling mom. There's no doubt in my mind that the majority of these kids, if not all, are going to grow up to be very smart, smart kids, law-abiding citizens. They've just got their first taste of what it looks like to live in a police state. Probably cops and law enforcement that they respected. They're going to have a hard time. They're going to have a hard time now figuring out who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. Obviously, I'm sure their parents will help them figure this out, but still, this is a sad state of affairs. This cannot go on because the law enforcement, whether it's federal law enforcement or state police, state troopers, even local police officers, they're going to continue to get discredited. And this is exactly what the left wants. The left wants a police state. They want FBI agents that they can control, CIA agents that they can control, local law enforcement that they can control, so that they can control us. And they want to purge the FBI. There's no doubt in my mind. They want to purge the FBI of the good guys. They want to purge local law enforcement as the good guys. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. The warrant charged Mark with violating the freedom. That's what it is. The Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. So that's what FACE stands for. Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. Now, here's what happened. Basically, Mark had gone to downtown Philadelphia area, and there was a very vile, nasty man screaming at him. Mark didn't pay any attention to it until the guy came up to his son and started calling him and his son all types of names. The guy even told his son, hey, your father's a faggot and all this kind of stuff, just being extremely vile. And there were other things that he called the son and the father that they could not convey. It was so despicable. But the man got right into his kid's face. And when he did, he pushed the guy aside. The guy happened to fall as a result of that, because the guy was coming towards his kid. And when the father pushes the man back, the man happens to fall. And this was apparently the guy had tried to press charges. This had gone to a district court. As a matter of fact, the charges were dropped. The case was thrown out. So this happened a couple of years ago, by the way. And so now the DOJ resurrects it and says, wait a minute, this guy violated the Freedom of Access to a Clinic Entrances Act because he was in front of an abortion clinic. Now, the guy wasn't on the abortion clinic's property. He was on city property, basically. But the left is going after whom they can. Now, who's the real enemy? See, the real enemy, you guys might think the real enemy is this pro-life advocate. And yes, to some degree, you would be right. But the real enemy is God. See, God is the enemy of the Marxists. God is the enemy of the communists. What are the building blocks of society? The family, the church, a government, hopefully government that obtains or upholds the rule of law rather than overreaches like our current federal law enforcement does, and labor. So you have to have those. You have to have people that work. You have to have a government system in place that's fair to everyone. Obviously, the family is the best structure known to man for building a civilized society, and the church. The church is there not only to keep us moral, to keep pointing us back to God, but to make sure that our lives are balanced and we're helping those that are in need. We're helping those that are less fortunate. And we remember our place and our duties on this earth. So the left wants to tear down all of those, and they are working to do it. This is what the communists have to do. This is what the Marxists have to do. That's why they're coming for you. This isn't just about a man that happens to be a sidewalk preacher or counselor. But what scares me, or what's disconcerting to me, is that they're doing this and they're ignoring the real issues, the real threats that we're going to experience. Hat tip Breitbart. Here's one. And I know many of you have heard about this, but let's talk about it for a minute here. Venezuela empties prisons, sends violent criminals to U.S. border, says the DHS report. Now, who does the Department of Justice, or the Department of Homeland Security in this case, who should they be concerned about? Should they be concerned about little old Mark Hawk, who is the founder and president of the King's Men, for an issue that occurred a couple of years ago that was dropped, by the way? The issue was dropped. I mentioned that. No charges. All the charges were dropped. I guess the guy tried to take them to court. It was kicked out of court. The FBI comes back for a second bite at the apple because they want to intimidate Americans. They want to intimidate pro-life Americans. They want to intimidate Christians. They want you to understand that you are going to bow down to the state. Now, you might not be a Christian. You might not be a person of faith. It doesn't matter. What matters is they are going to get you to bow down to the state. And eventually, something's going to happen to you where you're going to be the last man standing and no one else is going to be standing alongside you. So you better stand up. Stand up for all of your fellow Americans. Going back to this story, recent Department of Homeland Security intelligence report received by the Border Patrol instructs agents to look for Venezuelan inmates that were released from entering the U.S., according to a source with the Customs and Borders Patrol Agency. The report, reviewed by Breitbart Texas, indicates the Venezuelan government, under the leadership of Nicolas Maduro, remember, he's a dictator there, unbelievable, is purposely freeing inmates, including some that are convicted of murder, rape, and extortion. Now, here's the scary part. Back in, I think it was 2020, as late as 2020, if I'm not mistaken, there were about 5,000. Yeah, here it is. According to the CBP, between October 2021 and July of 2022, this summer, more than 130,000 Venezuelan migrants have been encountered after entering the United States illegally. So that's right. October 2021 to July 2022. In all of fiscal year of 2020, there were less than 5,000 Venezuelans that were apprehended. Not that entered, 5,000 that were apprehended in 2020. Not that came into the country. Now we're talking about 130,000 that we know of, not counting getaways, that have entered the country illegally from October 2021 to 2022. And they are going all over the United States. And it doesn't matter if they committed murder. It doesn't matter if they've committed rape or extortion. They're coming to a city near you. Now, it's very dangerous for us to have open borders, obviously, because we don't know who's coming into the country. Real terrorists, people that are a threat to all of us, people that are a threat to the American way. And we're not following these people. We don't know who they are. That's what scares me. If I could go back to Gavin Newsom issuing state IDs to any and everybody, it legitimizes, not only does it legitimize illegal immigration, do you think that they're going to be able to figure out, these people can say whatever they want. They're not going to be able to trace these people. They're not going to be able to confirm who these people claim to be. People coming from other parts of the country in Venezuela admit that they knew of murderers, rapists, hardened criminals that were on buses coming to the United States from Venezuela. They knew of them, but there's no way to identify them. In Venezuela, they don't have the type of tracking system that we have under that freaking communist regime in Maduro. So they're sending their worst of the worst. Venezuela used to be one of the richest countries in Latin America. Now, look at them under Maduro, under this dictatorship. And they are sending us the worst of the worst, intentionally so. So not only do we have China, as Trump would say it, sending the worst of the worst, and sending fentanyl, and Mexican cartels, sending fentanyl through the borders. We also have, Maduro sending the worst of the worst in Venezuela. We're being attacked from all angles. And you have a DOJ, you have a federal law enforcement agency that is concerned about a sidewalk preacher. See what the communists do? They turn the good into bad, and they turn the bad into good. That's what the communists do. This is all about sowing more chaos so that America could collapse from within. And you have these little left-wingers, these Bidens, these Joe Bidens, these Gavin Newsoms that are contributing to the total destruction of the United States of America. Why anyone would take Gavin Newsom seriously is a mystery to me. The guy's a complete and utter idiot. He destroyed the city of San Francisco. He's destroying the state of California. And this greasy-haired numbskull has the audacity to believe that he can be and he should be president of the United States. This is what's happening. Prepare yourself. You think crime is bad now? You haven't seen anything yet. You haven't seen people that just know crime as a lifestyle, not just in the hood. I'm talking about people that live it every single day, every single waking moment, because their lives have always been about survival, have always been rooted in crime. And they think nothing of it because in their countries, it's just how they survive. It's as simple as that. Now, they're going to be unassimilated. They don't care about the laws of the land. Obviously, they're breaking into the country, invading the country illegally. And no one has told them that they're not getting in with this type of behavior, with their values, with their morals. No, Joe Biden is opening the door. Here's another threat that I want to close out with. Counterterrorism expert Cynthia Farahat reveals Muslim Brotherhood planning to destroy the West like a cancer. Now, we've known this, but here's the truth. We've always had it. Listen, as Americans, there are enemies that want to kill us all. They don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, right, center, left. They don't care. All they care is the Western way of life must be destroyed. Now, these little communists that will ally with these Muslim Brotherhood terrorists, in the end, the author Cynthia Farahat reveals the Muslim Brotherhood always wins out when they've allied with communists in the past. It says here, the Muslim Brotherhood's end game is to murder every non-Muslim and destroy Western civilization. This according to counterterrorism expert Cynthia Farahat, who revealed they are open about their intentions of infiltrating and corrupting every American institution like a cancer, quote unquote, and slam the far left inside of the United States for its propaganda, quote unquote, supporting the global terrorist organization. She did an exclusive interview with Breitbart. She's a well-known Egyptian author and a political analyst. And she talks about the Muslim Brotherhood's association with virtually all Islamic terror groups, including Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, Islamic Jemaah Islamiyah, the Egyptian Islamic Jihad, Hamas, along with many other radical terrorist groups. She says it's basically harder to find terrorists that don't have a direct connection with the group than it is to find the ones that do. I mean, she said it's just in the Middle East, everyone knows how dangerous the Muslim Brotherhood is, but they don't seem to know it here in the United States. And the left wing, the Democrat Party, cozies up to these people, but they want nothing but the annihilation of the West. And the left may think, hey, we can work hand in hand, kumbaya, but they don't understand that the Muslim extremists hate them too and wants to subjugate them as well. Farahat explained that the radicals group ultimate goal is exactly, quote, what they say they want to do, which is a complete annihilation of those who dissent from their worldview. I called my upcoming book that she has coming out, The Secret Apparatus, The Muslim Brotherhood's Industry of Death, and the subtitle of my book is not my hyperbolic understanding of the group. It is what they themselves call their operation, she says. She says their end game is to murder every single non-Muslim on the planet and also kill all Muslims who are not members of a jihadist group and destroy Western civilization. That's according to their own words. She puts their own words in her book. So this is what our federal law enforcement agencies, this is whom they should be worried about. Not worried about some sidewalk preacher, some street sidewalk preacher who, by the way, obviously doing a good job I commend him for the work that he's doing in front of the abortion clinics, but he's not a threat. And the left knows he's not a threat, but he is a threat in this sense. He's a threat to the communists. Because again, I go back to the building blocks of society. What are those building blocks of society? Family, the church, the state, and then labor. They have to destroy all of these the communists do in order to take over. But the idiots don't realize there's a greater threat out there that wants to bring all of us down. We saw it on 9/11, lest you've forgotten. And it's going to get worse. This author goes on to say, Farahat noted they believe in their radical eschatology that they can bring about the end times. And she says this is exactly what they have been saying, and this is what they have been working towards achieving. She says it's not just rhetoric. They have been consistently working to achieve these ends. The strange thing is I never have to explain to to Muslims why the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization, she said. It's a foregone conclusion. Everybody knows it, knows it's a terrorist organization. Farahat noted that she has never spoken to a Muslim in the Middle East who doesn't know someone who has either been hurt or murdered or persecuted by the Muslim Brotherhood. She said it's common for people, a common thing to have been victimized by this group in the Middle East. I myself and her family, she says, had been victimized by them in every single way humanly imaginable. She says whether it was political persecution, religious persecution, and until they kidnapped my brother and tortured him, they tried to assassinate her back in October of 2011. She says everybody in the Middle East knows of the Brotherhood's viciousness. She slammed the propaganda in the U.S. that asserts that it is Islamophobia to talk about the terrorists who kill Muslims and non-Muslims alike. I could go on and on and on. I mean, just several great comments that she makes. I'm going to have to get her for an interview, but it's astounding. But all of that to say, we are missing the real threats to this nation because the left has become a threat in and of themselves. And they want to pretend as if these other threats don't exist. There's violent people coming in from different parts of the country because our borders are wide freaking open. We have an Islamic threat. We have a criminal element threat by the borders being wide open. We have a fentanyl threat. Crime is going to surge and crime is going to continue to surge until we get all of this stuff under control. And the only way to do it is to make sure we kick every one of these left-wing radicals out of office beginning this November. And we have to call our politicians and demand that Merrick Garland is impeached, demand that Alejandro Mayorkas is impeached, of head of the Department of Homeland Security. This nonsense has to stop. None of us are safe. Meanwhile, the left is coming after you. Borders are wide open, but the left is coming after you. Criminals coming in by the thousands. Radical Islamists still want to annihilate us, and they won't stop wanting to annihilate us until they achieve their objective goals. And the FBI is worried about a father of 7 whose wife homeschools their children, and he goes out to save the lives of unborn babies once a week. Man, we are in such a sad state of affairs. Such a sad state of affairs. Guys, understand what's at stake this election season. It is good versus evil. It is liberty versus tyranny. All right, guys, appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast everywhere podcasts are found, including Apple, Google. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Like, share, rate, and review there. Also follow us on social media, The Carl Jackson Show. That is The Carl Jackson Show. Por favor, don't forget to support our sponsors, Mike Lindell and MyPillow at MyPillow. We know that he's a patriot. And don't forget the Perkel bed sheets and the Giza Dream sheets that are available now on sale. The Perkel sheets, for example, normally a queen size set sells for $89.98. You can buy them using my promo code for just $39.98. And there's all types of sizes and colors available, and the prices will vary according to that. But order now while the supplies are still there. You'll be helping American jobs and American manufacturing. You'll also be helping this podcast. You can give them a call at 800-858-0263. 1-800-858-0263. Use that promo code Carl, or go to mypillow.com click on the radio listener square. Also, you can use the promo code Carl there. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. If you live in Florida, please stay safe. And until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.